This is Curatia speaking. I'll put my camera on for a few minutes. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the meeting. I will be chairing the meeting today. My co-chair, Maxwell, is actually traveling and on mission, so he's not able to join us today. But please participate and contribute. We have quite an interesting agenda for you today. If Sipo, you can just move the slides so we can take a look at today's agenda. We have obviously quite a few of the regular agenda items, but we have a few new items for you. We are going to start off with the climate update from the SADC Climate Services Center, and we have Sunshine online to provide that update. We're also going to give you a very brief overview of the current and projected outlook of the food security situation. But it's nothing new. As you know, we had the SADC RVAA workshop last week. The process is still ongoing. So we will provide a more comprehensive update on the food insecure population, the key drivers, the potential impacts of the forecasted El Nino on food security and livelihoods in the August FNSWG presentation. And today we will just give you an overview of where we stand using our current sources. UNICEF and WFP will provide us with a nutrition update, and then FuseNet and WFP will provide us with a price and market update. We have a very new, interesting presentation today that's going to be provided by FAO Mozambique, together with the government of Mozambique, on a study that was undertaken on land availability, accessibility, and use for IDPs, host communities, and returnees in Cabo Delgado. So we're looking forward to hearing the results of that study. We are also going to talk a little bit on the new UN co-chair. As you know, FAO has been the UN co-chair of the FNSWG close to almost 2 years, and it's time to have nominations for the new UN co-chair. As you may recall, we recently had a nomination of the NGO co-chair. FuseNet had served an excellent 2 years, and we're obviously very grateful to Godfrey and the team for the excellent 2 years through which they supported the FNSWG. And over the last 2 months, we have World Vision that has actually taken over the UN co-chairmanship. And World Vision International has been represented by Maxwell to date. So this is the agenda for today. I think for now we can hand over to the SADC Climate Services Center. Sunshine, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Curatia. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Sunshine.
Thank you so much. So I'll request probably Sipo from her side to roll the slides for me. Yes, thank you so much. So I will address probably 3 issues, as you can see on the outline. I'll look at the performance of the past 3 months, and then look into the current state in terms of rainfall for the region, especially the drivers, sorry, and then I'll then provide an outlook for the next coming 3 months, 3 months to 4 months. We can move to the next one, yeah. So in terms of performance, we can see that in April, we had the start of the dry season, and in May, we had unseasonal rainfall that occurred mostly in South Africa, Lesotho, and Eswatini, and parts of southern Mozambique. Otherwise, rains were expected in the northern half of the subcontinent, which we saw also in June that you had some rains in DRC and Tanzania, and also in the coastal areas of South Africa, I mean, parts of Cape Town. You can see that we had rains there, and the lowest tip of Namibia. These rains, especially over the Namibia part, especially in June, they were not really serious rains. These were because of the cold fronts that we've experienced in the past few weeks. We can see that in Madagascar, they are entering into a dry dry period, just like as it is over most of the other islands and the bulk of the region. So if you look at the combined rainfall performance over the past 3 months, you can see that the middle of the subcontinent remained relatively dry, and the southern part was relatively wet, and the northern part was relatively wet, including some parts of Madagascar, eastern parts of Madagascar. So you can move to the next one. So the drivers that we track, we've got the ENSO, which is where we source the El Nino situation. And then we have got the regional drivers like your IOD, Tropical South Atlantic, your SIOD, your SWIO, your Bengolanino, your South Annular Mode, and the usual quasi-stationary high pressure systems that we track, and including low pressure system, the tropical troughs, and also the tropical waves. We can move to the next one. Yeah, so if we look at the global situation in terms of sea surface temperature recordings as of July, which is this month that we're in, we can see that the forecasted sea surface temperature for the next coming 3 months, which is the August, September, October, as of 2023, we can see that along the western coastal areas of the region, along Namibia, Angola, and western parts of South Africa, and also some certain parts of DRC in the west, on the coast, you can see that there's a cooling current there, which is extending all the way into southern parts of Southern Africa. You can see there below South Africa, there's a cooling there along that coastal areas. This will have a negative effect in terms of rainfall over the southern part of the subcontinent. But if you look next to Madagascar, we've got a warming trend going all the way to Tanzania, Kenya, over that eastern coastal areas of the IOD and the SIOD, which then will result in enhanced precipitation over the next coming 3 months. And if you look also in the following 3 months of September, October, November, we've got a similar trend. You can move to the next. Yeah, so if we look at the series plots of the different drivers that we're looking at, specifically the sub-regional drivers, we can see that the IOD, in this instance, we're just looking at the IOD from different centers. They are all showing us that we're going to have a positive IOD in the next coming 6 months. So we should expect with the ENSO signal, there's a teleconnection, between a positive ENSO and a positive IOD. It usually results in intense precipitation over northeastern parts of the subcontinent. You can move to the next. When we look at now the SIOD and the Tropical South Atlantic and the SWIO, we can see that the Tropical South Atlantic is going to remain relatively positive, neutral but positive, on a positive side, which we don't expect it to contribute much in terms of the climate. The variability in the climate in the next coming 5 to 6 months. And then when we look at the SIOD currently it is positive. But the most of the models as of July, they are still sticking to what we saw in June, that they anticipate a decline in terms of the positive signal will move towards neutral for most of the models. That's what they are giving us. So we should anticipate that it may not have much of an effect, as we have seen on the sea surface temperatures there, that we have that relatively cold phase that might contribute to the decline in terms of the sea surface temperatures for the SIOD, and the SWIO is expected to increase, which may augur well for coastal areas of Madagascar, southern Madagascar, and coastal areas of Mozambique, eastern parts of Mozambique, where the SWIO is located, and most likely South Africa, of course. And then if you look at the Tropical South Atlantic from the French, it sort of like agrees with the WMO model situation. We can move to the next. When we look at global centers, we can see that from WMO, the multimodal ensemble output, it is not having any rain for now because we're in a dry phase, but it's got some pockets of dry signal over western parts of Angola and DRC, and we've got some pockets also in western Tanzania, but with a chance of increased precipitation over the coastal areas of Tanzania and also northern parts of DRC. We can see that for both the August, September, October, and also the September, October, November period. The same situation you can see also from the European Copernicus output, C3S. We can see a similar signal also showing with increased precipitation anticipated over the east coastal areas, especially during the September, October, November, which is due to the positive IOD situation that we've seen. We can move to the next. Now we've got a tentative outlook for the region. For this time of the year, we're not yet in a rainy season. You can see you've got the bulk of the region in a dry phase, which we see with the white shaded areas inside the continent. Those are indicating that it's not yet a rainy season for those countries. So we only focus on the areas which are in gray. So where you can see the signals, we've got that dry signal over Western Angola and the wet signal over Northern DRC. And we've also included in the eastern parts of DRC a dry signal and also a dry signal of Western Tanzania and a small wet signal over eastern parts of Tanzania for the September, October, November period. Sorry, for the September, October. August to October period, and then the September to November, we put increased precipitation over northern parts of DRC and also eastern parts of Tanzania and slight wet conditions over northern Madagascar, and the dry situation will persist, is expected to persist over Angola because of the cold current that we saw in our drivers analysis. We can move to the next. Yeah, so the situation still stands as we showed last month that most of the countries that will experience some form of increased precipitation is mostly DRC, Tanzania, and some below normal rainfall of Angola and also some parts of Tanzania and DRC. I submit you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sunshine, for that excellent presentation. Let me open the floor quickly for questions. Are there any questions coming from members? I see no questions. So thank you so much, Sunshine, for those key messages. They are well received. And I'm sure if people have any questions, they are free to also put it in chat. Oh, I see people are now raising their hands. So we have Sina. Sina, you can go first.
Thanks, Q, and thank you very much, Sunshine. From a layman point of view, listening to the presentation, I'm now left a bit confused. If I've got it well, are we saying that we are expecting normal rainfall in all the other countries, except, of course, the northern DRC, and which appears to be at odds with what the other models appear to be sharing, the global models. So I'm kind of confused, frankly speaking. What are we saying? Over. Oh yeah, number two, before I leave Q, I just wanted also, I think, to mention that it would be nice maybe if SAGI can also probably be sharing, maybe going in future, the temperatures the forecasted temperatures, because temperatures affect agriculture quite a lot. Once we go above a certain threshold, the performance of crops that are adapted to certain regions, livestock, your egg production for chicken, all those become affected. And we are seeing, of course, what is happening in the Northern Hemisphere. We don't know whether there's any forecast indicating what is likely to happen in the Southern Africa. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Sina. Maybe we take a question also from, there was another hand. Was it Tiwonge?
Yeah, thanks, Q. Morning, everyone. I think my question was really aligned to what Sina also put across in terms of how the relationship between, I think the slide that has just been put up there and the narrative or the presentation that has just been made in terms of what is the actual outlook for the region and what should we expect going forward. I think there was premise of up to November, but probably we need to have a bit. We are almost in August, so I think it's becoming more urgent for us to have a bit more information in terms of how that relationship is going to pan out, what the focus are saying around that relationship and what we should expect in the coming cropping season. Over.
Thank you, Tiwonge, for that. And that's noted. Also, let's take a question from Pam as well, and then we'll hand over to Sunshine. Pam, you can come in.
Hi, Q. Thank you to Sunshine for the great presentation. I think it's great to have an actual climatologist give a lot of detail in these presentations. I just have one question. The second to last slide that Sunshine you presented, I know it's forecast precipitation for September, October, and November, and a lot of some of the central the central areas, or rather central western areas, which sort of have their onset earlier on in the season, are shaded in white. And I wanted to find out if it would be safe to then assume normal onset for some of those areas. I see that a lot of them are gray, but some of them who have onset in October, such as parts of northern South Africa and so on, would it be safe to assume normal onset? Because I know that there is a bit of concern of delayed onset and early season dryness for the coming El Nino season. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Pam. I don't see any more hands. So Sunshine, I think Tiwonge and Sina had the same question on the difference between the map that we are looking at now with the gray areas where we are expected to have normal rainfall, and the last map that actually talks to, some parts of the region having below average rains, some having above average rains, and uncertainty over what this really means based on the El Nino forecast. And Pam's question on also, having a better understanding of the forecast and what it means for the onset of the season. So over to you, Sunshine.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks a lot. And thanks for the questions from the colleagues. I'll combine the first two, as you've said, Chair, that the first two colleagues, the questions, they were relatively similar or related, close to each other. I'd like to thank the proposal that we include temperatures in our next presentation. I will do that in terms of the forecast. We'll have that improvement in our presentation. And then to explain what, maybe if you can go to the focus maps, even these ones, I can use them to explain what is happening. So the areas which are shaded in white, I can use this one, though it's not a forecast. This is not a forecast. This is observations. But the areas which are shaded in white, those are areas which are out of season, which means it's not a rainfall season for those areas. We have masked them out. Like you can see in this map for December, January, February. Oh, sorry. I was just using that one that you're looking at, but let's use my forecast there. Okay, let's use this forecast. So you can see for August, September, October, according to climatology, the bulk of the region, when you combine the 3 months, the rainfall that usually occurs climatologically, it's over most parts of DRC, not northern half of Angola, and northern parts of tip of Tanzania, and parts of South Africa, as you can see there, where you've got the Swatini, Lesotho, and parts of the Cape.
Yeah.
It's because of the Mediterranean type of weather. You can't hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you. We can hear you, Sunshine.
Oh,
Go
okay.
ahead.
There was another voice. I thought probably they were not hearing me. So as you can see, with the period of August, September, October, it's a bigger chunk of the subcontinent that is still in a dry season. But as you remove August, now you can see that August was the one that was contributing the dryness, excuse me, over most of the region. But when you remove August from the climatology, you look at September, October, November, now you've got a bigger part of the continent, being now, like I remember Pam was talking about onset, being now in a rainy season, starting their rainy season. So climatologically, most of the region will be starting their rainy season. During the September, October, November 2023 period, which then makes it very crucial to get a clear forecast for that period. So this forecast that we're issuing, we give you 2 seasons. Otherwise, we can just give you 1 season and not give you the next season. It's for planning purposes, so that the September, October, November, we'll update it in the next presentation. We'll have the map as you see it, but with probably a slightly different forecast or a slightly improved forecast, because we'll be closer to that period when we issue it in August. But in our next meeting, we will most likely be presenting results from SACOF, which I believe most of you might be able to attend, because we're having it end of August. SACOF, the last 2 weeks of August, we'll be having SACOF, most likely in Mauritius. So we'll be grateful to have members of the FNSWG participating in that meeting and contributing to the processes that will take place. So in terms of interpretation, the areas which are gray, those are the areas which are showing that the rainfall season will be active at that time. So to answer Pam, it does not necessarily mean that we'll have a normal onset for now, because we're not yet forecasting the onset as yet. But if you like we make an example of the northern parts of DRC and coastal areas of Tanzania, you can relatively assume that they will have an early onset. They can expect an early onset, but over western part of Angola, we should anticipate a late onset based on the forecast. And also northern parts of Madagascar may have a normal onset or too early because of the anticipated normal to above rainfall over that part of the. Otherwise, the rest, if you want to use normal planning for now, you can say, okay, we anticipate a normal onset, but it may not may not realistically mean that, because we're yet to update that in the next month, in August. We're yet to update the September, October, November period. I submit you.
Thank you, Sunshine. I think there's one more question in the chat. I think we can allow for one more question. If you see the question from Rain, what does it mean? Northern Mozambique may not have rains up to November.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is not the white areas. They are not a focus. As I indicated, Chair. Those white areas that you see there, though even western coast of Madagascar, those areas are areas which, according to climatology, they are not yet in season. They are yet to start. I'm sure you'll see when I present the next meeting, you will see the ONT, the October, November, December map. The gray map will probably most likely cover all these areas. They will mostly be gray, which will indicate that according to climatology, by October, November, December, most of these parts of the region, we have the rainfall season on for almost all of them. But then the forecast will be a different thing altogether. I submit you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sunshine. I think all of the questions have been adequately answered, and we appreciate you taking the time and producing these forecasts for us and explaining, the potential impacts of what they mean. So we look forward to having you at the next meeting in August. And also, as you said, thank you for extending the invite to FNSWG to participate in SALCOF 27. That I believe will take place in Mauritius between the 21st, I think, and the 29th of August. So we are awaiting the full concept note, the program, which will be shared with members when the SADC Climate Services Center shares it. So for now, you can diarize those dates, and it's much anticipated, and we'll have a better outlook, obviously, when the SALCOF is out and when the NALCOFs actually come out. So let's keep our eyes out for that. But if you have any more further questions for Sunshine, please feel free to put it in the chat and you can keep the discussion going. Thank you, Sunshine. I think in the interest of time, we'll quickly move over to the regional overview of the food security situation. And I will present that today as co-chair, since Maxwell is not here. Just to also mention that this is taken from the latest BusinessNet Outlook. The SADC State of Food and Nutrition Security report is currently being drafted, as I had mentioned earlier. The process is ongoing, it's not finalized, but when the report will be released, we'll have an update on the food insecure population in the region and by country. We'll also have an understanding of the main drivers going forward into the upcoming season. So what we are presenting now is just one slide on the food security situation between the period June to September. So as we know, we are in July, so harvests are improving household access to food across the region, including dietary diversity across the region. Staple food supplies have improved in surplus producing areas in Lesotho, northern parts of Zimbabwe, central and northern Malawi, northern and central Madagascar, and northern Mozambique. And these areas are currently experiencing IPC phase 1 or minimal food insecurity outcomes. Dry spells that occurred in January and February has resulted in production losses in southern and central Zimbabwe and southern Mozambique. And most of the poor households in these areas are likely experiencing stress or IPC phase 2 outcomes. And households, particularly the poor and very poor households in areas with below average harvests, are earning additional income from staple food purchases by increasing participation in casual and agricultural labor activities in the surplus producing areas. However, crisis or IPC phase 3 outcomes are likely to persist in areas that were affected by Cyclone Freddy, particularly localized areas in Mozambique, Malawi, the Grand Sud of Madagascar, and conflict-affected areas of Mozambique and DRC. As you can see, little pockets of phase 3 outcomes are likely to persist in those areas if you look at the IPC map. And from June to September, there will likely be an increase in the number of households experiencing stress and crisis outcomes, particularly in these areas where you see localized output phase 3 outcomes as households' food stocks decline and as we move out of the dry season. Staple food prices have declined in most markets, following the increase in market supplies from the main harvest, improving household access to food. However, prices remain higher than last year and compared to the 5-year average. In areas with below average production, prices are likely to rise in August and September, which is much earlier than normal, as more households start to rely on market purchases for their food because of declines in household food stocks. So for now, this is the regional overview. I'm sure this is not coming as a surprise to most of you. And as I said, in August, we will have a much more comprehensive update on the food security situation, the current and the outlook. Are there any questions on this overview before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, I don't see any hands. And on this note, I'm going to hand over to, I think it is WFP. Yes.
Okay, no, I was just asking if in the case of Eswatini, there is no data there because it seems gray. Is it because there's no data, or at what phase is Eswatini?
Okay, let's go back and look at the map that we have put. Eswatini, if you see, I think it's not, it's probably not, it's gray, which means that it's not been analyzed this time around.
Okay.
It's usually a FuseNet remote, because we are using FuseNet analysis.
Yes, okay.
Generally, if there was a more recent analysis, you would see the borders would be highlighted, like Angola or Lesotho would be highlighted in a particular phase, like Angola phase 2. And these are remotely monitored areas. If you are looking for an analysis on Eswatini, we will provide the latest IPC analysis for you, which will be cleared by the Eswatini VAC in the coming weeks. So that analysis is still pending validation internally, and yeah, will be shared as soon as it becomes available.
Okay, thanks, Q.
Thanks, Justice. Just to mention that most countries where we do have regular IPC analyses, that will become available also in the coming weeks as the process of validation takes place. So we are not allowed to actually share the results before government validation of the results. So over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Q, and good morning, everyone. Of course, our presentation is quite a number of slides, but I'm just going to talk about the first 4 slides. So if we can go to the first slide, Q. All right, so the first one, I'm just going to talk about the regional highlights, where we're still observing high rates of acute malnutrition within the region in specific countries. But today I'm going to focus more on DRC, where the food security and nutrition situation is deteriorating continually due to the worsening crisis and the recent floods in Eastern DRC. What I also want to mention is that in the last week, the WHO shared new guidelines on management of malnutrition. And obviously, this is going to affect how we approach treatment of children who are acutely malnourished, whether they are severely malnourished or moderately malnourished. And so in your countries, you are going to see both WFP and UNICEF rolling out this new approach. The plan on a global scale is been to identify 15 countries that are going to roll out this new approach on a pilot phase. But for the other countries, it will depend in country on the agreements between the UN agencies, WHO, as well as the other NGOs who are in the countries, is how this approach is going to be rolled out. Then also last week, I think from the 21st of July, there was an emergency preparedness training that was conducted in Zimbabwe, co-hosted by both WFP and UNICEF. Then when we talk about surveillance, in Angola, the preliminary results show that for the smart survey are showing an improved case of the nutrition situation. I know that there was a report that was shared last week whereby there was an issue of one death due to malnutrition in one region. We are in touch with the country and they are looking at the issue because I know there's a report that's been circulating, so we are looking into that. But the preliminary smart surveys in Wheeler province, they show that there is improved nutrition in Angola. And then in the Cabo Delgado, the 23 smart survey results, they are also showing high levels of stunting and also wasting between 0.3 to 16%, which is also quite high above the WHO thresholds. And so this also shows a double burden of malnutrition. Madagascar, there is data collection that's ongoing for the smart survey in the 11 Southeast Health District. In general, for the treatment of malnutrition, essential nutrition supplies have been secured till October for most of the countries except for Angola and Zimbabwe, which are experiencing stockouts. So overall, the key message is that we need to continue the multi-sectoral response at scale, and then also to continue the advocacy for funding efforts for Angola, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Mozambique, as well as DRC. Anyway, I'm going to give priority to DRC because this is one of the high focus areas as of now. You can go to the next slide. And the next one. Okay, so I'm going to talk about DRC. Just the situation update. Of course, the conflict is unabating, so which continues to drive displacement in the country and also raise high insecurity levels. And the situation continues to deteriorate. Also issues on bottlenecks on supplies and customs, also leading to issues with humanitarian response. Prices are increasing. There have been reports also of measles and cholera outbreaks. And also it's estimated that 34% of the people are in crisis and emergency IPC levels for food security. So WFP has already activated corporate scale-up to cater for these increasing needs, and system-wide scale-up is being declared by IOM, and UNICEF are also responding to the call. So what is the response so far? There is distribution of life-saving unconditional food and cash assistance for the next 6 months, and also nutrition treatment is going to be scaled up. There is only supplies available until September. So it means that there is a shortfall for about 31.3 million to cover the needs from July to December 2023. And the smart surveys are also ongoing in Eastern DRC. So for food security, we have a 3.349 million funding gap for food assistance and nutrition. And then you can see also that graph that shows the requirements for LNS, which is lipid-based nutrient supplements, as well as vegetable oil and super cereal for the supplementation of moderate malnutrition in DRC. So I'm going to stop here. The other slides, you can refer to them after the meeting, but this is just highlight of the nutrition situation and the nutrition response in the region. Back to you, Q.
Thank you, Tracy. And thanks for highlighting the critical nutrition situation in the countries of concern, particularly DRC. Let's see if there are any other questions. Any questions, comments from members online? Any questions, comments? Yes, Thomas, go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. And thanks, Tracy, for the update. I have a question regarding, I think it's Namibia, or when you were talking about Angola, and then said that WFP is confirming the case that were communicated through a report during last week, I think. Is this related to Namibia, where according to the weekly RIASCO humanitarian update of 14th of July, it was indicated that there were 45 malnutrition related deaths in a region in Namibia. And we are wondering if, I work for the IPC, by the way, so we are wondering if there is any nutrition data in terms of any recent assessment that could potentially lead into an IPC analysis and inform the situation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Thomas, for your question. Let me jump into it right away. So the case of death that I was referring to was in a report for Angola. And we understand that it is reported from a region where WFP is not currently working on, and we have requested for more information from the country, and if we get more information, we will share. I can share the report with Q, and she can share it with everyone else where the case of death from malnutrition was reported. And then coming to Namibia, there is a slide in the presentation that I did not talk about, but I'll just highlight that there was a rapid assessment that was conducted in Namibia, and that because of that rapid assessment, the government is planning to provide an interim 3-month food relief assistance in Omaheke and Karas and also Hadap sub-regions. So I wouldn't be sure if that corroborates to the IPC results that you're talking about, but for sure, there are issues of drought, and there's been an assessment that's been conducted in Namibia, and the government is going to provide some interim relief in the meantime because of that drought. I hope that clarifies. Over to you. Back to you, Q.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification, Tracy. I think we can definitely facilitate information sharing with the IPC team for Angola and for Namibia as well. So we can have a short discussion later, Thomas, if that's okay. And let's
Yes,
see.
it is.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. All right, I don't think there are any more hands. If you still have any questions for Tracy, please feel free to put them in the chat. We can now move to our next agenda item, which is the price and markets update. So is it Jones? Jones, are you online? Over to you. Who is going to be delivering this presentation on behalf of Usenet and WFP SIPO? Did Jones confirm?
It's supposed to be Jones. I thought I saw him earlier. Maybe he dropped off. I will just check on him. I will just check on him on phone.
All right, so I think we can move on to the study on land availability, access and use for IDPs, host communities and returnees in Cabo Delgado, which is going to be given by our colleagues Rain and Brasilino from the FAO Mozambique Country Office. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So I will give the floor directly to Brasilino, who will participate directly to the assessment. Thank you. Over to you, Brasilino.
Thank you very much, Ray. As Rain said, my name is Brasilino Salvador. I'm agronomist and project officer here in Pemba Field Office. So first of all, to say that this study on land availability, accessibility, and use by IDPs, returnees, and host community was performed here in Cabo Delgado by FAO, the government, and all the agriculture working group members. They contributed to the methodology and all the questionnaires that were prepared for the study. Next, please. So this is the outline of what we'll be presenting. We'll start with a short introduction, the objectives, which districts were covered. We'll talk a little bit about the methodology, the main results and observations, the geospatial assessment, and finally the recommendation and conclusion. Next, please. Yes, just to give a little bit of a brief of the situation here in the northern Mozambique, especially in Cabo Delgado. We know that we're over a million of IDPs in Cabo Delgado, but right now, according to the latest IOM DTM matrix, we have more than 800,000 people, IDPs, and more than 420,000 returnees. And because of this conflict situation, the agricultural livelihoods were disrupted, especially the crops production, the fishery sector, the livestock, and the forestry. And because of that, the government established a resettlement site in almost all the host districts of Cabo Delgado in the southern parts. In Nampula province, we have some districts also that they hosted some IDPs. So in all the districts, the government tried to allocate production blocks, which are called mashambas, a parcel of lands that are used for crops production, which for each household is approximately half an hectare, which was allocated by the government to the IDPs. Next slide, please. So the objective of this study was to assess land availability, accessibility, and use by IDPs, returnees, and host communities in the two provinces to ascertain the impact on food production and livelihoods, and also to assess the use of other relevant natural resources, which are water and forest materials, and also to understand the livelihood systems of the three population types, the IDPs, host communities, and the returnees, including gaps and opportunities, to understand the social dynamics between the displaced and host communities, what are the source of disputes and tensions, and also to see the priorities and needs of all the three population types. Next slide, please. To continue inform FAO and other partners future durable solution-oriented programming to build resilience of the three population type for better food and income security, to build resilience to multidimensional shocks, economic, climate, security, sanitary, and others, to ensure agreed, equitable, and sustainable access to natural resources by all communities, and increase peaceful coexistence between communities, especially IDPs and host community, and lay the foundation for voluntary integration of returnees. Next slide, please. It's not moving for my side. Yes, thank you very much. So here's just to show the district that we covered. As I mentioned, we have 2 provinces, Cabo Delgado and Nampula. In Cabo Delgado, we covered 9 districts, and Nampula, we covered 4 districts. So all the locations are indicated there in this map. Thank you. Next slide, please. So in terms of methodology, as I said in the beginning, apart from FAO, which is my colleague from Cabo Delgado, from the Riosa, from headquarters, and from RAF, we also included people from the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, from the government in this case, which is represented at the district level by the SDI, which are District Services of Economic Activities. We also have the National Institute for Disaster Management, which deals with IDPs allocation in all the districts. At the district level, they're represented by ISDPI, which calls District Services of Planning and Infrastructures. We target 3 population types, which are IDPs, returnees, and host community. We conducted qualitative and quantitative methods through face-to-face interviews using Kobo tool collect, and 150 to 208 households sampled per district. So in total, we have more than 2,100 households that were surveyed. We had interviewed 34K informants, and we had engaged 22 focus discussion groups, which involved men and women, and they were the special group of women because sometimes they are not open when they are integrated together with a men in a group. So with support also from FAO team on remote sensing, using the Google Earth engine, the random forest, the prototype, as they know very well better than me. Thank you. Next slide, please. So just to have a quick brief on the thematic areas that were covered by the questionnaires. We ask about the demographic of all the population type of the households. We look at livelihoods and income before displacement and what is happening now by the time of the interview. We look at the agriculture production before and now. We look at the dynamics of the markets, the land tenure issue, and the coexistence between IDPs and host communities. Next, please. Now coming into the findings, the study was very big and it was not published. I think we'll be able to share with all the members of this group, but we'll try to summarize the main finding of the study. Looking into the land aspects, we can see that the majority of IDPs and returnees reported access to land. In both IDPs, returnees, more than 94%, they have access to land. But one thing that we've discovered or we've seen is only 15% of IDPs, they have land allocated by the government, meaning that others, they were sharing with host community, they were renting, and they were allocated by the traditional leaders, they were sharing with other family of members of their family. The process of land allocation is not documented. Most of the households, they don't have documentation for remapping. Even the production blocks that are located by the government, they are not mapped. They don't have the documents of right to occupy and use the land. And the consequence of that, we have a very low level of land tenure security for IDPs. And women, we have seen also that women, only 25% of women, they own land. Men have 25%, but we have 40% of both men and women having the ownership of land. And women in general, they have small sizes of land. Next, please. In terms of land, again, perception on tank security, 73% of host community, they mentioned that they feel they perceive security of their land for the next 5 to 10 years, while for returnees, only 67%. And the IDPs, they are the one who had the very low levels of perception of perceiving their land tenure rights as secure. We know that because most of them, they don't have the documentation, as we mentioned before, so they don't feel that they're secure on their land. So for the particularly vulnerability of IDPs who have not been allocated mashamba by the government, that brings a negative impact on food and nutrition security, hindering resilience and self-reliance. Because from what we have seen, most of them, they've reported that when they start producing in their lands, the host community, they take it back. Sometimes at the beginning, when they receive, the IDP receive support from the UN agencies, from NGOs, then the host community, they feel that they're left behind and they take their land back. So that's why it has a very negative impact on them. Also, the insecurity for the returnees, what we've seen is that the insecurity, conflict, and fear of violence main factor limiting access to their original plots. Because of this security situation, they are not allowed to go very far for the areas that are not cleared yet from the military. So they produce their crops near the places where they stay. That's why they feel this insecurity of land. Next slide, please. So most IDPs, in terms of livelihoods, most IDPs and returnees for the two populations have more than 90% reported that their livelihoods prior to being displaced was agriculture and animal rearing, but mostly agriculture in both for the both IDPs and returnees. The displaced population have the knowledge and skills in agriculture, but we have to see that 68% of household interviewed consider that food produced is enough to meet their household demands. And we can see that for IDPs, 36, for returnees, 55, host communities, 83, and only 41% produce and they have enough surplus to sell. The one who have the most percentage are the host communities, returnees, they come second, and lastly, the IDPs. Next slide, please. For the returnees, we've seen that the main reason of them returning to their original districts, because in the district that were hosted, there were limited sustainable livelihood opportunities, especially in the resettlement site, lacking food and income security. That's why they prefer to go back. And the other aspect is the security has been increasing, although we don't know for sure, but for now, it means that the security situation has been improving. But the returning process is taken as an individual initiative. The government doesn't say it official for them to go back, and there's no support for an external partner on that. The returnees, in general, they have access to their original land, as you can see here, 98%, more than 98%, but they lack adequate support from the humanitarian development to resume their livelihoods. Even the government is not there in full yet. And their assets and the infrastructure, most of them have been destroyed. So when they return, they have to start from zero. Next slide, please. About the coexistence between IDPs and host communities, we have seen that 88% reported that there are no tension between the groups. However, 51% they've experienced conflict over natural resources, and more than 47% of assistance from NGOs and UN. And the benefits perceived expressed by host communities, the IDP brought development in their areas, brought more humanitarian assistance, extension service, and inputs, and they've managed to create new friends, new social cohesion. But at the beginning, we had, as we mentioned here, this conflict because initially the IDPs only received the assistance from other NGOs or UN, but after the government perceived that, they changed the approach. So now whoever goes to support the IDPs, they should include 6% IDPs, and 40% host communities. Next slide, please. So we have three causes of detention. First is the provision of humanitarian assistance to IDPs. Because, as I said, initially the assistance was given only to IDPs and not to host communities. And other source of tension is the land. As we said it before, the IDPs, the government only gives 15% of all the total IDPs that we have. The others they share with the host community. So the host community, when they feel that they're left behind, they take it back. We had so many cases of that being reported by the respondents. The other point is the competition over natural resources. We know that one of the main problems in Cabo Delgado is water. So the boreholes that they've been using to collect water, now they have to share with IDPs. Now they have to travel long distance to get firewoods, even the construction materials, special bamboos. They have to travel long distance because now they don't have nothing nearby because of this movement of IDPs. Next slide, please. So in terms of priorities of the person affected by displacement, for the IDPs, we need to guarantee timely and enough emergency support to meet their priority. We can do that through cash and food assistance. In terms of livelihood support, it's important for them to rebuild their productive capacity and to minimize the dependence on food assistance so that they can generate some income. So they need agriculture inputs. We have to reinforce capacity building and for them to develop small business. For returnees, they also need cash and food assistance for them to start meeting their priority needs. They also need livelihood support to rebuild or to restore their productive capacity and generate some income. The key infrastructures that were destroyed, they need to be rebuilt or reconstructed. That is very key for the returnees. Next slide, please. In terms of opportunities, partners work under the humanitarian development peace nexus. They have to meet the immediate needs of IDPs. That's why we talk about cash and food assistance. In terms of they need livelihood support for long-term recovery so that they can build resilience and self-reliance through tools, agriculture inputs, meaning seeds, higher value and demand cash crops, capacity building, establish farmer field schools and other necessary groups for them to share the knowledge, disseminate knowledge, and so that they can rebuild their production capacity. We have the increase the peaceful coexistence to break the cycle of displacement through joint capacity building, rehabilitation activities, and set up platforms to inter-community exchanges, conflict resolution. Next slide, please. So we have to invest more in resilience, self-reliance, and peaceful coexistence. I mentioned geospatial assessment. There are two areas of interest. We look at IDP's areas, resettlement site in this case, within 5 kilometers and within the 5 to 10 kilometers distance. And from the production block, we look around the 1 kilometer distance around the point location of the blocks. And we assess the land cover change, the biomass, land degradation. We compare the results before the returnees occupied the area and now that the returnees or IDPs are there. Next slide, please. So in terms of geospatial assessment, we've seen that within the 5 kilometers, the forest area decreased, the agricultural land decreased, and the land degradation was also more concentrated within the first 5 kilometers. This is clear because they prefer to go to the place near so where they stay. So they go to the 5-10 kilometers after they've completed all the area near by the place where they stay. Next slide, please. So for government, FAO, and other agricultural livelihood partners, the recommendations are all here to create more production bulk to allocate mashamba to all IDPs so that they can have more security on their land tenure aspects. Adequate consultation with the participation of host communities, IDPs, traditional leader government should be taken into account, considering conflict-sensitive and gender-based analysis. The government have to continue putting in place monitoring mechanisms to safeguard the rights of the IDPs, even for host communities and returnees. We have to strengthen the capacity of local level, customary community-based dispute resolution mechanisms to protect the legitimate tenure rights of the three population types. The lowland should be disseminated, and all the IDPs, host community, they should be sensitized to apply for DWATs, which is the right to use the land. And we have to create standard mechanisms of identifying and allocating land to the IDPs. Next slide, please. The policy, legislation, and procedure of allocating land to IDPs needs to be updated from scratch because right now there's nothing clear on that issue. The government should prioritize mapping of production blocks in all the districts. In this case, the mashamba located, the land use planning, inclusive of displacement, age, gender, and conflict methodologies. We have to increase the district level human technical capacity for land use planning and mapping. We have seen that the district, although the capacity is there, but nothing actually is being done. If we can't give that to the IDPs, at least we should the government should issue certificates of temporary user rights so that they can feel the security to use the land. Next slide, please. And we have to lay foundation for durable solution to internal displacement by humanitarian support targeting the immediate needs of the three population type we've mentioned here about food, from food assistance, cash, and vouchers. We have to promote joint activity to build trust and promote coexistence. Can be through farmer field school, the Dimitra clubs. We have to couple land allocation with capacity building, which is very important. We have to promote and support diversification of livelihoods with a value chain approach, looking into agriculture inputs, small livestock, extension services, bringing machinery equipment, capacity development. We have to look also to increase the yields of the crops production, of the animal production, and link it to the market. And we still need to identify business, a small business for the IDPs, those communities, especially for returnees, for them to start small business and restore their livelihoods. The consultation is very important. It's being done now by all the partners almost, but we should continue before intervention to ascertain real needs of the three population type. The agriculture intervention should be tailored to specific needs of community with no agriculture background, especially the people that are coming from the coastland area to the inland area. Most of them, they have no background in agriculture. So when we give support, we have to take that into consideration. We have to see also agriculture as an opportunity to start over. Those communities, the fisher community, when they come inland, they also get involved in agriculture, but capacity building is very important and exchange of experience. The agro-dealers network for input support should be disseminated and should be strengthened so that they can support the access to input. Water availability is a very big problem in Cabo Delgado, and we have to look for opportunities for mechanisms to collect water from rain, from boreholes, so that we can have more water for agriculture. The quality of water also is another issue that we have to take into consideration. So the ecosystem protection, restoration, and management guideline need to be strengthened with geospatial analysis, which are not up to date in our national data system. Next slide, please. So finally, we think that the government, FAO, humanitarian and development partners, including all UN agencies involved in agricultural livelihoods, they have to upscale the level response program in northern Mozambique. That will result in increasing resilience, self-reliance, and peaceful coexistence between IDPs and host communities so that we can lay ground the foundation for durable solution. Thank you very much. And sorry for taking you a lot of time. We have a lot of things to share, but I think the document will be shared with all of you so that we can have more details on this start. Thank you very much. I don't know, Rain and Sina, if you have something to add.
Thank you.
Nothing to add for me. Thank you, President.
Thank you, Rain and Brasiliano. That's for the very, very interesting and enlightening study. Definitely very unique and innovative study with very, very important recommendations for response programming in northern Mozambique. I see there are two questions in the chat for you, Brasiliano and Rain. The first one is from Charlene. I see the first one was answered, but the second and third question, does the Mozambique government now allow cash support from NGOs as part of the humanitarian support for NGOs? And this is one of the recommendations in the report. And the second question is, following depletion of forests by IDPs as stated in phases of 5-kilometer increments, are there measures to rehabilitate the forests or boreholes to at least a state closer to where it was or better in order for both to coexist harmoniously? So over to you.
Thank you very much for these questions. Starting from the depletion of forests by IDPs within 5-kilometer distance, measures are there in order to minimize this problem. It's written in the documents by the government. So now what is needed, we need the partners and other initiatives to implement that. As a result of this study, FAO has started a proposal together with WFP and the UN Habitat, and we are looking into activities that they can respond to that. So includes the planting of trees, fast-growing trees, the planting of the replacement of the trees that were cut, and we are looking at the repairment of the dams for crops production. And we've given the government the list of all the bores that were broken, that they need rehabilitation. And even in the project, we've proposed some activities. We've put some budget for rehabilitation of bores, both for crop production and for human consumption. So these are the measures are there, but what we need partners, we need UN agencies, we need the NGOs, all people that are involved in this to get involved and tackle exactly the needs of these people that are in need. In terms of support from NGOs, is a recommendation, but it's not only the NGOs, we mean all the actors that are involved in humanitarian and development assistance, looking not only the NGOs, national, international NGOs, UN agencies, the government, and all the community-based organizations that are supporting IDPs and host communities. They have to all gel and tackle the problems that were identified in the report. I don't know, my colleagues, if you want to add something. Thank you.
Thank you, Brasiliano. Just perhaps to answer the first question, it was asked if we can use cash as a humanitarian activity, cash-based intervention. So I think that we're still not allowed, but please confirm. Brasiliano, I know that a colleague from the Ministry of Agriculture was here before, but he had to rush to the direction. So I don't know if he's back and he can answer the question. Otherwise, if you have the answer, please. Thanks.
Brasiliano, did you go ahead?
Yes. So the cash is not allowed, especially in the returnee districts, because we've seen that every time the government have seen that every time that there's a cash intervention, immediately after the process, they are taxed because maybe they want the money for them. So the government has said we have to hold a little bit on cash interventions. So in the host community, in the host districts, some districts they're allowed to do cash, but always in consultation of the government, so that they check the security, everything, and they give the go ahead for the NGOs. So the cash interventions are there, but they have to be taught very well, and they have to be discussion with government to see if it's appropriate time or not.
Okay, thank you so much. And definitely the report is going to be shared for further information and for use. Okay, there's another question. Oh, more of a comment, I think, from Javier. In those places where cash is not allowed, vouchers can be used as an alternative. So I hope that answers your question, Charlene. Do you have any follow-ups? Anyone? Any other questions? I'm going to quickly look at the chat to see if there are any hands. I mean, yeah, the participants, if there are any hands, no. So thank you so much to the team from FAO Mozambique. Please kindly share the study so that it can be circulated to all members of the FNSWG. Thank you. And we will move on to the last agenda item. We're doing quite well for time today. And the last agenda item then is the nomination of the UN co-chair. And as I mentioned, FAO's co-chair tenure is coming to an end in August. And we are now seeking the next UN co-chair. This is the criteria according to the terms of reference of the FNSWG for the election. So according to the criteria, only members are eligible for nomination, and you can refer to the terms of reference. If you don't have it, we will reshare it as part of an email that we will send out on this process after the meeting. Only members with more than 6 months of membership can be nominated. Members will take into consideration the previous co-chairing organizations to maintain a leadership balance. What this really means is that if a UN agency has co-chaired the FNSWG in the last 4 to 5 years, then they are not eligible for re-election. So that, I think, automatically eliminates FAO and WFP. I'm not sure, yes, who were the 2 previous co-chairs. The same organization shall not take the co-chair role for 2 consecutive terms, obviously meaning that FAO cannot run again for re-election. And in terms of defining a member, in the terms of reference, it stated that members are defined as people or agencies who attend meetings frequently, participate in presenting and sharing information. In other words, they are quite active, interact with other members during meetings, and promote the food and nutrition security dialogue, proactively suggest meeting topics, and host or co-host meetings and webinars, provide feedback and suggestions for meeting improvements or content improvements, engage in sharing of information whenever feasible, provide inputs to the information products produced by the working groups, such as the bulletins, and contribute actively to FNSWG activities, such as the retreat that we had a few months ago, share events and other food and nutrition security materials, and promote activities within their networks. So this is the criteria actually defined during the retreat by members themselves who attended the retreat. So this is the criteria. The UN chair is up for nomination if you are keen. And if an UN agency is keen and you would be interested in co-chairing, then please submit your interest to the co-chairs and the information management officer, which is Sipokazi. So you can send your interest to Sipokazi and CC Maxwell and myself. A further communication will then be sent out to all members on the interested UN co-chairs, and the matter will be taken forward in the next FNSWG meeting in August. The process for the nomination is officially beginning today and will end in August, where FAO will officially hand over the co-chairmanship to the next UN co-chair. So if you are interested and you meet the criteria that was defined by members themselves, please submit the name of your agency to SIPO and copy Maxwell and myself. So on this note, let me ask if there are any questions coming from the members on the UN co-chair. And if you would really like to, maybe we need to put a time frame to this. So in the next 2 weeks, please submit your interest and nomination to SIPO. So we give it 2 weeks from today. And let's see what that would mean. So by the 8th of August, we hope to receive all interested nominations from UN agencies. And as I mentioned, the process and then will culminate on at the next FNSWG scheduled for the 29th of August, where the new co-chair will then be announced. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this meeting. If there are no comments on the nomination of the UN co-chair, before we conclude, are there any matters, any other business, anything members would like to raise, to share information, any events coming up, trainings coming up that you would like to extend the invitation to members? I guess there is no AOB. We will circulate the terms of reference to all members to refresh your memories on the criteria and action points noted for circulating the study, the land study in Mozambique, and action points noted also for information sharing between UNICEF and the IPC team, and from SINA to include temperature, and from Tiwonge to extend the outlook periods for the climate forecasts. Thank you so much, colleagues, and see you at the next meeting. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Patricia.